What's up, Game Devs? T-Chan here, and welcome to episode 2 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with today's most experienced game developers 7 days a week. We will learn about their background, the obstacles they have to overcome, and the tools they use to reach success. And today's featured guest is Angel Muniz. Angel, it is go time. Are you ready?
Yes, I am, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. She is a HoloLens developer working in art and design through environments and prop creation for Unity and Unreal engines. She co-organized 3D Learning Network on Facebook for industrial vets, juniors, and recent grad artists. She also tutored in 3D art and lightings for games and films. So go ahead, Angel, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Thank you, Tony. I'm really happy that you're doing this. I really wish I had this when I first started, so I'm happy to help out in any way that I can. I actually got started when I left production to do post-production and VFX for the challenge and the richness of the art. And along the way, I was asked to design a GUI for a game. So they were like, well, we need a menu, we need an interface, we need something for the player to interact with. And the funny thing is I didn't know UDK at the time. Unreal Engine wasn't free. Unity wasn't free. We didn't have a lot of the resources and tools that we have today. And I really didn't know how to transfer my UI design to a game engine. And that was a little discouraging, and it was very humbling. So I decided to leave the startup and go back to school. And it's a funny story because, and I don't recommend anything that I'm about to mention, but I was so ambitious. It just really was a pivotal point in my life and a very big learning milestone to have experienced that with a startup and get so excited and then just watch everything fall apart in front of me due to my lack of education. So I bought a plane ticket from production work that I had done for that year, and I flew to Seattle. And I walked into Bungie, and I said to the on-duty security officer, I said, I flew somewhat like 1,500 miles to come over here to ask a very big question that I just can't find in a sea of things on the internet, and I need some focus. My school, I just started, and I don't know who to go to or talk to, and I'm very serious about what I'm doing. Is there somebody here that I could ask some questions? Because this isn't just for me. I just have this feeling, and I felt this responsibility to take this information, and I knew that I was going to pass it on. And so he said, we don't really encourage anyone to come in to the studio like this. If you can catch someone on their way back from lunch, lucky. So I got lucky. There were a few that walked in from lunch, and I pretty much said the same thing. I said, I'm from Houston, and I go to an art school there, and I really need to. I don't have much in the way of guidance. We don't really have an industry down there. Could you help me? I thought they were gonna laugh. I thought I was gonna be turned away. I thought I was gonna walk out and just be like, well, that was for nothing. 5 minutes later, literally 5 minutes later, somebody came down, and it just so happened that they were an alumni from the same series of schools. And he said, hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm from Pittsburgh. And he was a lead environment artist for Bungie, and they were working on Project Destiny at the time. The Destiny 1 hadn't already been released, and he brought with him the lead VFX artist. And when I spoke to them, of course, I asked the most common question, what programs do you use? All the new questions I threw at them. They were very patient. They were more philosophical rather than technical, because, the industry, just about anybody can really learn the tools, but not anybody can learn and acquire the lifestyle that comes with it and make the sacrifices that need to be made in order to become that person that can handle that type of workload, that type of caliber of art and production and, in the industry. So he said, just keep trying. I put in my portfolio. I worked at small companies first. I worked for startups. I worked on teams. Do your best to do that and move forward. Don't let anything stop you. Keep working on your craft. And, I submitted like 6, 7 times before Bungie finally accepted me. And even to this day, I still can't believe I work here.
You went, you bought a plane ticket all the way to Seattle. And what's awesome is that it worked in the end because you kept pushing it. That's what's awesome. You kept going for it. You kept doing things.
It's funny, Tony, I got to tell you, I actually pushed it a little bit further. And that same day, I went to 343.
Oh, wow.
And I caught them right before they closed. And I caught a man that was their lead VFX artist. And of course, he was in meetings and then he had to go for the day. He called me back. We were on the phone for about an hour and a half, just talking shop, talking about the industry, talking about how to get in, what it took for him to get in. We're still in touch to this day on LinkedIn. And so occasionally I'll drop a line and check on him and ask him questions or congratulate him on his latest release. So it's, again, I don't recommend this. I was just very persistent and I knew I was different from most of my peers because I had done something so bold. And it's not what I did. It's the attitude that I had behind it.
So persistent, so ambitious, and it paid off. Let's break it down. What do you consider your main area of expertise?
I'm actually an environment artist. It's a specialization that I chose. I thought I was going to become a generalist because I had a production background, but because I wanted to initially start out in VFX, I do environment and effects. So I do 2D and 3D effects. Right now, I put that on hold to focus more on texturing and lighting in the engine. I'm working with all the latest PBR tools and getting that down to a science. And from there, I moved into optimizing for mobile and for the HoloLens and Unity. So I'm just, when I keep focus on environment art, I do wind up doing a little bit of technical. I do wind up focusing on texturing. At times I do end up doing VFX. And rarely do I work on GUIs, but it's just, I started out in the profession for about 10 years doing video production and then doing post-production and getting into motion graphics. So that's always going to stick with me and be in the background. But mainly I focus on hard surface, modular building, things of that nature, level design. It depends on what project and what team and how I could best serve that role. But it's good to have a specialization that you stick to and have a couple extra skills behind it so that if you need to do a little extra problem solving or if you need to fill in until you can find a proper team member, that usually helps.
Now, let's talk about environment artists and texturing. What if people had to teach them stuff, that expertise, what would you suggest that they use?
Honestly, I feel like each specialization is a major all on its own. If we're going to talk about school, even if you're at home, it should be all its own thing. And then when you get into it, there's also these subcategories that you should learn. And so it really depends on what you feel is coming natural to you that you have a passion for. So say, for instance, I chose environment and level design, and I chose texturing and lighting in the environment. I knew that when I walk into a room, the first thing I notice are the walls, the doors, the texture, the paint, everything, the lighting, the way it bounces off, if how many final gather bounces are in this room, that kind of thing. I'm guessing these things and taking it in. And I knew that's why I wanted to focus more on environment. I was an animation major. I did focus in animation for a while. I had fun rigging. I had fun animating bipeds, getting things to come to life through. But it's like I said, like if you were to choose animation, you got to learn about the principles of animation. You got to learn about rigging. You've got to learn about, paint deformers, vertex painting, paint weighting. You got to make sure that you learn more of the science behind the craft and you keep it focused to that area.
So what are common mistakes that game developers make, even at a pro level?
at a pro level, I've gotten feedback from a few of my AAA buddies. There's an issue. There's several issues with any field you go into, but one of the most common ones that are mentioned is that work-life balance.
Mm.
When you're in AAA, you got crunch time. Nothing else matters except for that project and except for your job. I mean, I know a guy that works at a studio, which, out of respect, I won't name, who recently mentioned to me that the only hobbies he has time for, and even barely has time for, he actually has to leave those hobbies to go back to work, is gardening and some, he'll play video games for a little bit, but that's literally all he has time for. And he's tired and he's worn down and he's upset about, common mismanagement. There are a lot of people at a pro level that get placed in management positions that, sometimes they say, oh, it's who you know, it's not what you know. Sometimes that's true. And sometimes people who end up in management don't necessarily have the qualifications to run the team or don't understand enough about the job roles and titles and production as a whole. I mean, it depends on what studio you're talking about. I mean, every studio is different. And he actually promotes agile Scrum workflow and organization and everything. And so there's that. There's other AA and single A companies or indies for that matter that, the common denominator is, either they don't have, there's a mismanaged budget, they don't have the money, or they kind of just put artists on contract, they outsource the prop modeling jobs to some other foreign country. I actually got this, one of the major unnamed studios that I had spoke to recently through a chat channel for, women in the field, a major producer, told me that, don't go for the prop modeling job. It's being outsourced. I mean, there's so many props there. Same with textures. There's libraries out there now like Substance Share. There's Turbo Squid, but in short, in Houston, I've seen some companies and communities kind of go for the whole, we'll purchase something on Turbo Squid and then we'll pay you to fix it rather than have you take the time to build it from scratch. And, it's counterintuitive. It's counterproductive. It's waste time and money, so you kind of have to decide what's a priority and you have to decide how you're going to go about it with the intentions of remaining organized and knowing what your resources are and knowing what direction you want to go and set deadlines, set goals. On an indie level and on people who are just starting out in the industry. So there's one other thing that I feel the need to mention, with this boom in VR, AR, and MR, there are a lot more companies in this city that I know of, and just based off my experience and from observing and talking and networking and working on projects, in the grapevine, there's a lot of people who have money and they are in touch with the medical or tech fields, and they've had their seasoned veterans in their field, and they come up with an app idea for virtual reality, for mixed reality, for augmented reality. They have no idea how to get started, and so they kind of try and join these VR groups around the city, and they have these big ideas, but they not only don't know exactly how to get started, how they would structure their app, but they don't entirely know which team members to hire for this kind of thing. And that's what I think these communities are good for. Get involved with your community. Go find people that specialize in the same thing that you do, who have aspirations for that. And you connect like minds. You never know what can happen. And when you do that, you can actually gain insight on the bigger picture as to what it really takes to get something off the ground, because you can have the greatest, ideas are a dime a dozen, but to actually execute them is a whole different story.
Yes, you are exactly on point. Networking is so important, and planning before you take action on your ideas is important as well. Let's go ahead and take it to your most personal experience that you had. Give us a personal experience of your most difficult moment. It could be an obstacle or an emotion you have to overcome. Be detailed and give us that story.
Okay, we can start how I got started. It's just when I first started, there were some things that happened that I just can't unsee and unexperience. And I say that kind of, I see the satirical humor in life. When we get excited, we have the enthusiasm for a project or for a game, and we don't necessarily either have the backing or the education or the resources, or we don't think these things through. But the idea is so amazing and grandiose, and everybody gets excited. And so that was I have an example of what I had mentioned earlier about, when you get started. One of the most challenging moments that I had to face was that, and I was in 3 different startups. I volunteered for one. The latter one was actually the most successful and the most exciting. But the first 2, you've got people who aren't even in the game industry, have no experience. They kind of don't know the workflow for art and dev and production and marketing and all that stuff. So I had somebody who was the owner and manager of this game he wanted to do, and it wasn't entirely original either. There was a game called Rift out there, and he was trying to model something almost to its exact likeness. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? And then there was another issue where, I've got investors on the line, and as soon as we put out a playable demo. So that's another issue that comes up in the field a lot is, should I or should I not work for free for this project? Will it pay off? What is the ROI? What is the return on investment? And he kept saying, he was going to reveal the name of the investors to us, and he never did. In fact, I at some point found out that there were really no investors. It was just something. Yeah, it was something that he kept saying to us to keep us hooked. And one guy who was an environment artist at the time, he inspired me a bit along my journey. Then he did some renders, and back then you really you didn't have PBR, and he needed to put out some environment tests to see what they'd look like for cutaways, so cinematics. So he was an environment artist and a cinematic artist, and so he put these renders in his light bill for his computer running for those amazing non-optimized renders. Took forever, and he ended up having a $300 light bill for a couple of months, and the manager was like, sorry, we've still got the investors, once we get this money, we'll pay for it. And that never happened. And communication was all over the place. We couldn't even get in, we tried to get into a TeamSpeak, and, everybody was talking at once, talking over each other, and there was no real foundation for the procedural progression of this group. And the last thing was the majority of the team, there were like 20 of us. 5 of us were working on marketing and image, and there wasn't even a product yet. And I'm like, what are you marketing? Like, what are you using? And, they're just trying to, and I left them be, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stick to my GUI here. And, it was just myself. I was a paradigm for what a lot of the team was sharing in our problems, which was the lack of education, the lack of understanding behind how to, anybody can try and think to make a game, but I don't know if people really seriously understand the blood and the sweat and the tears and the money. Did you know that I read an article that said that the average character to build minimum for one character, lit, textured, animated, rigged, paint weighted, everything, is $30,000.
Whoa!
I read this 2 years ago.
30,000?
That's minimum. And to make a game, a minimum of $1 to $8 million to make a successful, full, robust, serious, well put together, well thought out, QA tested, USDA approved, first class game.
Oh
Functional.
My gosh.
And so that's why you got these crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. And we didn't have that either at the time. We didn't have GoFundMe. We didn't have Kickstarter. We didn't have any of that. So no one really knew anything. We were just trying to make a game, throw together whatever we could. And those were the worst. It was a series of moments, one after the other. And I think the last thing that really did me in before I left was the artists were trying to come together And to this day, sometimes this is a problem where a group comes together and they say there's a lot of inconsistencies, there's miscommunications, there's some issues, we're suffering, we have needs that need to be met so that we can help you get this project together as artists or as developers. And needs were not being heard. And so the morale would suffer and people just started quitting.
If you feel like the team don't have a vision, not communicating well, is unorganized, and for one, you don't trust the person next to you or anything like that, I think it's a good idea to leave that as soon as possible if you could. That's the way I'm taking away from this. Angel, what do you want to make sure game devs take away from this story?
I try to live by a few principles. And, it's really up to you if you want to follow them or if you want to take them and tailor them to your own unique experience, because everybody's journey is different. We have a lot of commonalities that we share. And in the trenches, yes, we'll try and stick together. But at the end of the day, you go home, you have a whole different life, or you go somewhere else, or you have a day job, or a social life, and so when it comes to work, if you're an artist or if you're a dev, if you're an artist, if you're on your way and you're starting out, post your original work, please. If it's a tutorial or if it's fan art, give credit or, name an inspiration. It didn't just come out of nowhere. It had to have started somewhere. Giving a little bit of background helps too. Don't fudge your skills. And this is actually, I got this from a guy that worked as a lighting artist for DreamWorks. He was very, very kind to sit down and talk to us about a lot of the do's and don'ts. And I developed my principles from some of his advice, but, he says, pick a specialization. Learn an extra skill that relates to the specialization. And that way you feel like you're applying for a job and you've done the work to prepare yourself. You don't feel the need to fudge your skills or say something, that will put you in an awkward place later once if you've been convincing and have been hired. And assuming there's no art tests. Oh, and prepare for the art tests when you're looking for a job, especially, for devs and indie companies that don't have a lot of artists, consider hiring more artists, and know what to look for in your artist, and know what the project needs. Learn the basics of modeling and animation or texturing so that you can help problem solve. An artist, try and learn a little bit about blueprints or scripting. If artists and devs actually come together and they build that bridge, I think a lot more projects would benefit. I think a lot more teams would work easier, knowing that they've got somebody in their corner, even if they're from another team. I've got some parting wisdom and advice, but for now, those principles I try and stick to. Stay organized, do whatever you can to know that you're accountable for what you do, and systematically plan for every single part that you take in a community, on a team, at a job, even for an interview, or even just for social pastime interaction. You never know who's watching. You never know who can help you, and you never know whom you can help. And stay engaged. Get support from your community, from your family, from your friends, and, be a living inspiration. And those are the things that I try and live by.
Yeah, and those are amazing principles. And yeah, let's take it back to more personal. Like, what do you consider your best investment you've made? And it could be investment of money, time, or energy. And how did you decide to make that investment?
It ties into what I'm doing now and what I'm excited about today. And so what I'm doing now, as an independent, I am working as an independent. It will be another year before I actually look for full-time work. I really like learning about the field and getting my hands dirty and meeting all kinds of people and I'm just a sponge. This is my sponge phase. I've been out of school for about a year. But, going through 2 associate's programs, a certificate and a bachelor program with almost a dual major, that takes a toll, and you have to kind of sit and reflect and consider your options and plan ahead for your course of action in your career. And at the same time, I want to give back to the community. Right now, I'm working as an independent for SolarShare. We're developing an app. that, for the holiday season, for the new Project Scorpio, Xbox, HoloLens, and we're developing for 2 different platforms. So it's for mixed reality and virtual reality. So that's exciting. We're starting on that, and I do consultation. So that's another thing I'm doing right now, is paid work. And then as under Pixel Devil 3D, which is my DBA, independent for ArcViz. So I still stick with my roots in hard surface. Coming out of a NASA internship, going to the school, there's no good way to answer that question, because when you're this ambitious, so many doors fly open, so many things happen. So I'd say, because I had the humility to go back to school or take on a course. It didn't even have to be in an institution. I could learn online or mixed or take a certification. It didn't matter, because the point is not to rely on the institution as a whole. You've got to have a little bit of a balance between it. It's a key word today in the podcast, is balance. Mm-hmm. And so, and I went and I took this internship opportunity, and I learned so much. I mean, I didn't realize how much I didn't know until I took this internship. And from this internship, I learned a lot about how important it is to be precise in the work that you do and care as much as you do, and how organization ties into that. As a mentor and as a tutor, I'm taking these things that I've learned from this internship and from networking and volunteering, organizing the learning groups and the HoloLens hackathons. You can, teach a man to fish, and he'll eat instead of just giving him a fish. So they'll appreciate it more if you teach them. Or, what is this another one? Idiom, lead a horse to water. But I don't lead the horse to water. I just tell them where the water is. And I'm like, it's there if you want to drink it. We organized an event around the consumption of this water. And so because of that attitude, because of that needing to share and living by those principles, we ended up, the Houston Holo group for the Houston HoloLens hackathon ended up in a worldwide build conference video for this year's 2017 build conference. And I can lead you to the link for that video. It is rather long, so I cut it down for time to show our debut on the stage, to put Houston on the map, to put our group on the map. And that led to even more opportunities. I ended up creating content for the official Microsoft HoloLens deep dive for Holo Academy, to get these people who have these companies to understand more about what it takes to develop and optimize art for the platform. And then that even spread. We've been reusing that content when I became a guest lecturer at the University of Houston. That led to another application that I'm excited about today. I'm working with Dr. Chang and Dr. Han from the University of Houston. Dr. Chang is the head of the computer science department, and Dr. Han, actually president of Phi Beta, also communication theory instructor. And I'm putting together a project with her, using her material for education purposes, to focus on people with high functioning, issues like anxiety and depression, who need to better acclimate into society through social situations or professional. And so we're at the stage now where we're in the first grant writing phase, and we're about to file a provisional patent to secure, which is another thing I would advise if you're starting out and you have a great app idea, and it's along the line of simulations, not just for entertainment. You gotta check the patents. You gotta look where your funding availability, look where your resources are, consider those things. And the last thing is, becoming a part of the IGDA. And I'm not just IGDA Houston. I've actually joined the group on Facebook for IGDA Seattle. And I'm staying in touch with a big hub there, because there's a lot of programmers there. There's a lot of developers there. There's a lot of VR enthusiasts there. And so I could get odd jobs through that way, doing independent and learning more about what's going on in different cities. So those are the things I'm excited about. That's kind of where I'm at, as far as the things that I'm currently doing to build the bigger presence and to build more credibility for this. So, and I think one of my most favorite things is the 3D learning group, how we've compiled a lot of information through PDF guidelines, notes, tips, and tricks for getting into the game industry. So if you get a chance to join the group, check it out.
Yes, holy moly, you got a lot of stuff going on. And congratulations, first of all, on your success that you got going on right now and all the stuff you've been organizing, especially contributing to the game dev. So thank you for that. And we are grateful for that.
Most definitely.
Now we are reached crunch time. And this is a phase that, of course, most game devs dread, but we are here to overcome it. Basically, I would ask you quick questions and you'll be giving us a ton of more valuable information in return. Angel, are you ready to crush it and release this show?
I'm going to do my best.
What was holding you back from becoming a game developer?
Self-doubt, feeling overwhelmed by the information out there, not knowing where to start. Have at least 3 mentors, have at least 1 mentee. Respect seniors and the veterans in the industry. So when you come across them, you meet them and you network with them, don't job grub, don't just, hey, can you hire me? You can shove your portfolio in their faces. Sometimes that's not what they want to see. They just want to connect and then stay in touch with current changes in the industry with the youth or people who are coming out of school and whatnot. That's what recruiters are for. So make sure that if you're going to push your portfolio, make sure that you target it towards recruiters and be resourceful. Try not to ask for too much feedback or too much help. There are many communities out there like Polycount, who have already answered a lot of questions in their Polycount wiki, which I've also put in the PDF in the 3D learning group, to answer the most common questions for people who want to start out or people who are having trouble or people who are working freelance. If you're going to school, don't depend on the institution. Rely a little bit more on your experience and your ability to network and focus on that portfolio. As far as social media goes, I was certified as a social media manager before I went into 3D modeling and art. One thing that can kill the interest is posting every minute and every bit of your progress. And you can actually do this in a community. You can wear people out in the community, and then people usually don't want to connect with you, or they don't, have as much enthusiasm for your project as you do because you're updating every second. Well, I moved this character from this point to this point today, and I'm posting about it. Give a variety of things, events that you go to or people that you've met. And lastly, and this is the most important, keep a positive attitude. It is about the work. It is not about the politics. And I say this, like, if we're going to talk about women in the industry and women having issues, I recognize that I'm a woman in the field. However, I recognize that I am an artist first and then everything else second. And that's the attitude that I keep to make sure that I keep a sterile and helpful and unified work environment for myself and for the team. And lastly, in addition to that, expect problems and prepare.
Prepare, yes. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I do 1% every day, even if it's a minimum. Just 1% learning, 1% volunteer, 1% of communicating and networking in my community.
Ooh, love that.
That was advice from my mentor. So I'm giving credit to Juwon Kim. She was an amazing mentor.
How has a failure set you up for later success?
The feeling of total chaos and annihilation, not just as somebody who has ambitions towards their specialization in their field, but, as a developer, like a game in the game development industry, and as an artist, you've got to let go of that ego, and you've got to connect, and you've got to compromise, and you've got to do your best to hold yourself accountable.
Ooh, so true. Sharing internet resource.
Internet resource, it depends. So if you're talking about organization, and effective communication, I stick with Agile and Scrum. Even if it's for something small, like, I have a game idea and I'm getting some people together, use Trello. Put some cards up. list your assets, list the things that you want to do in the game, the certain levels, certain checkpoints, things like that. It's a very valuable tool to quick start, but for more complex projects, I would say Scrum, definitely. Scrumalliance.org/Scrum. I'll send you the link. Oh, and source tree. If you're in between the complex and the easy, source tree through GitHub for pushing content to your team has been very valuable in my experience.
All right. Yep, I will definitely link those up. Okay, now this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to become a great game developer?
Wow, that's really intense. that sounds like a game all on its own.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
The first thing I would do is start asking questions and challenge my environment. I would challenge, and when I say challenge, I don't mean confront or quarrel or fight with. I mean by investigate, look into what resources do I currently have at this point in time. Well, if money is not an issue, and quitting is not an option, then I think the first thing I'm going to look for is people to connect with, groups and communities. I mean, I think that I've advocated that quite a bit in this podcast, but I can't stress enough how important that is to join and find like-minded individuals in which you could best serve the teams. And even then, be wary of people who want to take advantage. So you kind of want to have your principles that you live by to filter out those people who are, there to, they have one track kind of mind. And usually nothing good comes of that. So people who, are balanced, people who are organized, like I said before, people who kind of know more of the direction they want to go in, I would look for those people. I would look for leaders, actually. My personality is I go look for the head of something or the leader of something, and I get to know them on a personal level and say, how can I help? How can I best serve this community? How can I contribute? Because somewhere in there, sooner or later, after you've worked hard, after you've served your community, it does pay off. Somebody has an opportunity somewhere where favors can be done. We return to tribalism in a sense, and the bartering system is open. Everything's fair game. You know what I'm saying? But you got to know your limits. You kind of want to have a life outside of that. So that's what I would do.
Wow, thank you. You have been dropping so much value bombs. Go ahead and give one last piece of guidance and how we can connect with you.
Don't try and learn and do everything. Take it, prioritize it based off of something that, picture. My mom gave the best piece of advice I've ever had in my life. She said, make sure that when you plan for your career, you don't wake up hating it every single day. So that should help you filter things out. And so you kind of want to say, okay, what do I not want to learn? What do I not want to do? And you kind of file it down and you make a list. Lists are very valuable. They're very freaking helpful. Like I can't make I have lists all over the place. You have no idea. My whole desk is littered of things that I want to do and see and improve. There was a quote that, and I don't know the source, but we were born with a purpose in life to add value by being the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Let that reflect in your work. Let that reflect in your networking. Let that reflect in your ambitions and your goals, and stay realistic. Do your research. That'll help bring the brick of reality right on into your cranium, and you'll be able to understand, okay, so what do I have? What do I have control over? What can I do? And if I don't like something, how can I change how I feel about it? And what's another way? Be a lateral thinker. Don't just stop at one solution. Have multiple. Be creative.
Be creative. And how can we connect with you, Angel?
I've got a website. It's under construction, of course. I know a lot of people say that. A lot of things are changing. I hope to refurbish and redo my entire website by this fall. Right now, you can visit it at am3d.work. And so you can also reach me at Pixel Devil 3D on Facebook. If you're interested in getting involved with the community, getting in touch, learning more, send me a request, either through email from my website for the 3D Learning Network. And then we can talk there. And usually either one of those two, three of those things. I'm also in the Women in Tech community on Facebook as well. We have a Discord chat channel. So if you're a woman in the industry and you want to find your way to me, that is one of the best ways you can find me. But mostly just email. Shoot me an email if you have any questions.
Shoot her an email if you have questions, Game Dell. She's open and she is willing to help. Angel, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, and for that, we are truly grateful. I will post everything up on my website, so don't forget, Game Dells, to check that out. We look forward to your future work, Angel, and until then, we will catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Game Dells, for listening, and remember that knowledge is only potential power. Execution is the game, so equip yourself with the best loadout and take action today. Go check out GameDevLoadout.com for all the resources, and if this podcast inspired you, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe and leave a review. Until then, join me on the next episode. T-Chan out.